Did Bhagwan recommend a particular diet to help us on the path and the quantity we should consume? Is being a vegan preferable to being vegetarian?
Um, Bhagavan didn't. Bhagavan gave general guideline. What he said is Mitta Sattvika Ahara. Mitta means moderate. Moderate both in quantity and also in quality, not having extremely spicy or extremely bland, just moderate. We're not trying to some people are overly prescriptive. You must avoid onions, you must avoid garlic, you must avoid this, you must avoid root vegetables. People have so many things that they say you should avoid, but these are too overly prescriptive. Bhagavan recommended moderation. That moderation, mitta, implies moderation in quality, in quantity, and also moderation in quality. So we don't have to go to extremes. But he said satvika. What is sattvic? Well, according to some people, onions and garlic are not sattvic because as Bhagavan said, garlic is very good for the body, not so good for the mind. That is, it has many good medicinal properties, but it can also it can also excite passions in the mind. But at the same time, an analogy that is often given, when a small sapling, a small tree is planted, you put a fence around it to protect it from the goats and from the wind and all these things. When the tree grows up, you can tie even an elephant to it. So at early stages, maybe we have to be very careful to avoid all our garlic and onion, but that may be helpful at a certain stage, but it's not necessary to be too overly prescriptive. For most of us, eating a little bit of garlic and onion is not going to, we're not going to fall from our sadhana just because we had a little bit of garlic onion. So we don't have to be overly prescriptive. But what is sattvic means those foods that are conducive to a sattvic state of mind. That is, of the three gunas, sattva, the exact meaning of sattva is beingness. So that quality of mind, the foods that incline us to a calm, clear state of mind, those are the sattvic foods. An important aspect of sattvic is that the food shouldn't be, there shouldn't be himsa, harm, involved in the production of that food. So we should avoid all, Bhagavan was very particular, all meat, fish, eggs, all these things. These are to be avoided because these cause harm. Traditionally in India, milk and milk products are considered as sattvic. But in the context of ancient India, or even up to relatively recent times, cows were, for example, during Bhagavan's lifetime, there were cows in the ashram. The cows were very well treated. From birth till death, they were always taken care of. But nowadays, the dairy industry, it's an industry. The calves are separated from the mother often at just a few days after birth. And often the young, if there are too many of the young cows, they're slaughtered for meat. And I mean, the whole thing is the meat industry and dairy industry are very closely connected. So because of the amount of cruelty that varies in the modern dairy industry, unless you happen to keep cows yourself and to take care of those cows, take responsibility for those cows throughout their life. Because what many people do, in India, I've seen people will keep cows, but when the cows grow older, they no longer produce the same quantity of milk. So they're no longer economical. You have to pay for feeding them, but they're giving very little in return. So people often sell off the old cows. But who's going to buy an old cow? It'll be some middleman who will then sell it on someone, and eventually the cow will go for slaughter. So if you take responsibility of keeping cows, you have to keep the cows from the time of their birth till the time of their death. Or if at all you sell to someone who you know will also take care of them till the time of their death. But even in India, that isn't happening nowadays. The things of, in a modern day society, everything is, money is the measure of everything. If cows are no longer producing enough milk, they're not economical, and therefore you have to dispose of them in some way. So in the context of the modern day world, I think being vegan is the best option. Unless you happen to be, if you're living in an ashram where the cows are taken care of throughout their life, then that's a different matter. Or if you have the means to take care of cows throughout their life, then that's a different matter. But for the vast majority of us nowadays, the milk that is commercially available is produced with a lot of harm. Therefore, being vegan is the best option. Bhagavan never prescribed this because circumstances were different in those days. Now circumstances are different. But Bhagavan never laid down strict do's and don'ts. He gave general guidelines, Nitya Sattvika Ahara, and he left it to us to decide for ourselves. And sattvic obviously means to avoid ahara means what's taken in. So it implies not only food, but other substances that we take into our body. So recreational drugs and alcohol and tobacco and all these things. These obviously are not sattvic ahara. And ahara means not only what is taken into the mouth, it also means what is taken in through the five senses. So we should also avoid allowing our senses to dwell on things that will excite passions and so on. So we as of course it all depends on circumstances, but as far as possible, we should try to feed our senses with things that are sattvic in quality. If we're always, for example, dwelling upon the news, all the terrible things that are happening in the world, obviously we need to know a little bit about what's happening in the world, but we shouldn't let our mind dwell too much on these things. In the 19th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, as far as possible, one shouldn't allow the mind to dwell much on worldly matters. That doesn't mean we have to completely avoid being aware of what's happening in the world, but we shouldn't be, we should, again, metta, we have to be moderate. We need to know a little bit of what's happening in the world, but not to dwell on these things too much. Because if we're constantly reading about politics and all the conflicts that are going on in the world, this will only agitate our mind. That isn't conducive to a sattvic state of mind. So we have to have a broad definition for Mitta Sattvika Ahara. It includes the food, but it also includes other things.